Welcome to the Rebuilt Man podcast. I am your host, Coach Frank Rich. And guys, we have an incredible conversation on deck for you today. I'm joined by an incredible gentleman, a colleague, a true leader in the recovery space, my great friend, Sathiya Sam. Sathiya has been a previous guest on our Superhuman Life podcast multiple times, episode 74 and episode 113. I'll link those down there in the show notes below. But Sathiya is an addiction recovery coach, and he's the founder and creator of DeepClean, a research-based and Bible-backed system for overcoming pornography addiction. A recovered porn addict himself, Sathiya has coached thousands of men from all around the world to address the underlying beliefs of their porn addiction, regain control of their lives, and walk in greater levels of freedom. He is also the host of the Unleash the Man podcast, and he's joining us today for a deep dive into his work and his organization, DeepClean. Sathiya, my brother, welcome to the Rebuilt Man podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Always a treat when I get to chat with you, Frank.
Likewise, brother. It's been awesome to see you. Like we were talking about before, you are one of the guys that back when I was first getting started was a figure in this space. And, we made some jokes around it. It's almost become like the cool hip thing to do. We were there when this conversation wasn't accepted. So it's been awesome to run parallel with you. And it's been amazing to see the impact that you're having. So kicking things off, man, tell us, what inspired you, back in those early days to step out when this was a taboo subject, when it was not as accepted mainstream and media wise to begin to help men who were struggling with porn addiction.
I actually like that it was taboo. I think that actually added a little bit fuel to the fire. There was a bit of a challenge there. And from my own story, I mean, I'm sure most people who listen to this podcast know nobody gets into this space because they dreamt about doing it as a little boy. Everyone's got a story, right? And so for me, I was so frustrated by the taboo nature of this subject, and no one was talking about it. No one's offering useful advice. And that was it for me. Was just someone needs to break the mold. And so there were me and a handful of guys that I think were doing it. You were definitely one of them. I started back in 2018, and even before us, there was actually a generation even earlier than that was like kind of like in the wild west of the online world and coaching space. And so we owe a lot to them also. But the taboo nature for me was the reason to do it, because I knew that based on my experience and the guys I was talking to, millions of people were having that same experience of they're struggling with pornography or they're struggling with some sexual issue, and they just don't know where they could have a safe conversation about it or actually get some practical advice that would change their life. And so that's kind of how it all began.
I love that, man. And I love that you leaned into the taboo part of it, man. It's been cool to see, you go to networking events or just social gatherings, and it's like, what do men, how they size each other up? It's like, oh, what do you do? And I remember those early days, man, I was a little worried about it, but like the response was so incredible. It's like, it always came in one of two ways. There was like this curiosity, like, tell me more, or this instant like deflect. And it's like, it can tell you a lot about a person, an individual, what they do when they're alone, and how they respond to you telling them that you're a men's coach that helps guys with porn addiction. I'm curious, man, because this work has taught me so much about myself. It's taught me so much about men, women, relationships, human nature, social dynamics. What have some of been the lessons that you've taken away and maybe learned about yourself and people in general once diving into this work?
I think there's two main things that come to mind. One is just the surprising impact of having purpose in life. Because that's such a non-sexual solution to something like pornography addiction, but it's incredibly powerful. I mean, we were just talking about somebody very popular off air. You had the privilege of being on his show, a massive audience, right? And almost didn't believe that porn addiction was a thing because he's living a life on purpose, and all the data suggests that. Certainly everything I've seen in my client base is on both sides of it. On the side of when you're struggling, often there is a lack of purpose or a lack of meaning, or those big dreams feel too far out of reach. And on the flip side, when guys do quit pornography, and I've seen this in all the stories out of your coaching practice as well, guys don't just quit pornography and carry on with life as it used to be. They start businesses, they get promotions at work, they start that ministry they always wanted to. So on the flip side, when people eliminate the stuff, they pursue purpose. And I really, that has surprised me. I did not know that coming in. And it's really actually challenged me. In February, I'll celebrate 10 years being clean of pornography. And it's challenged me to continue to dig into my purpose. I feel like that's the greatest preventative solution I have to make sure that 10 years becomes 20 years and 50 years until, my life is over. And I think the second thing is just the power of healthy community. And that word has always overwhelmed me. Even as a leader, I feel like fostering community, creating community I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And it always felt so massive to me. But I had John Eldredge recently on my podcast. He wrote Wild at Heart. I don't know if you've heard his book before. And he said something really interesting. He said, once guys reach their 30s and beyond, they usually only need 1 to 2 really good relationships. And even if those relationships are digital or virtual, they're still really, really powerful. It's still enough for a guy to feel satisfied and find meaning in life. And that's really reshaped a lot of kind of even how we structure our programs, and even to the nature of what we offer our clients now. We really emphasize community because we've just found again and again, like, even if your system sucked, I think we have an amazing system. But even if our system was bad and we just got them into a really healthy community, guys would probably get results because it's just that powerful.
Community and purpose, such important parts and missing pieces for so many men. I think I've heard you use this quote. I think it's the original source is Johann Hari, right? The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but it's connection and community. I'm curious, congrats on, the upcoming 10 years. You mentioned doing this work in 2018. I'm sure in the early days, it was like you maybe found purpose in solving the problem for other men, but now you've obviously grown as a businessman, an entrepreneur, a leader, a family man. You've welcomed 2 children into the world in the last few years. How has your purpose evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, part of what inspired me to start DeepClean was out of a really dark season of my life. I was engaged. 2 weeks into my engagement, my fiance at the time, wife now, she was bedridden. Doctors didn't know what was going on. I was working as a pastor, not making very good money, and medical bills were piling up for my fiance. And that's what actually made me go, okay, I think I need to take a bit more control of my income and become an entrepreneur. But for me, I couldn't be the guy to start like an e-com business and an Amazon store. I've always thought of how do I use my life to make other people's lives better. So I think I've been fortunate to have that foundation. But the last few years, the big change for me has been becoming a father. And realizing the work that we do helping guys quit pornography is so much bigger than just the guys that are in front of us, whether they have kids or not, assuming one day they do have kids or one day they make an impact in the world one way or the other. There's a ripple effect. And I don't think I realized the extent of it until I had my first son. And then I realized, dang, this kid is going to look to me. I'm the template. I'm the example. And, we just had a second son. And now it's like a second set of eyes. Like the bar is elevated now because maybe I could hide a couple things from one kid, but now I got 2 sets of eyes on me, and the bar is that much higher. So that's the thing that has really, I think, changed in my purpose, because the business has grown and we have a team around the world and we've helped thousands of people, and that's all great. I'm very proud of that. But you and I know, you've been in business longer than me. You can lose something overnight. Like it can happen in a flash. And I'm proud of what we built. I hope I never lose it. And at the same time, I know I could. But my kids, I'll always be their dad. And that deeper kind of anchored purpose for me has it's added fuel to the fire to change more men's lives so they can go and make the world a better place. And it's also elevated the standard for me of the caliber of man I want to be, publicly and privately.
I love that. Some of the best messages that I've received over the years have not been from the men that we've worked with. It's been from their spouses, their wives, and I've had teenage kids sometimes. Like I actually had an opportunity. We had a local sheriff who was a member of our church, so he lived in the same town and community as me. And through the coaching, like he got reconnected with his family. I got to spend time at his home. We did like a little mini documentary style testimonial video, and it was just amazing to have like his daughter pull me aside and be like, thank you. Like, you gave me my dad back. This was like a young girl who was like entering into her senior year of high school. And she was just grateful for like 12 months to be able to spend with him. And to hear you talk about that ripple effect, I always think about the movie with Ashton Kutcher, The Butterfly Effect, how like one decision, one life altering event can change reality for thousands of people. We've been very fortunate to work with influential men, guys that are public figures like, yourself. I know you have as well. And guys that have impact and influence underneath them, not just in their family, but in their communities, in their churches, sometimes in very large organizations. So know that every single person underneath them is feeling the ripple effect of the work that we do. That's the fuel that has kind of driven me more recently. And I think like you, I started with trying to help men, but it evolved into so much more, like real influential change on the world. I think that's your saying, right? Like change the man, change the world.
That's it. Yeah. I believe that through and through. Yeah. I think men make the world a better place. And I think that's partially why our world is suffering so much right now, is because we've grossly minimized the role of men and masculinity and everything that comes with it. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, we could sidebar a whole different conversation around the agenda and pornography, how that played a role in that. I'm curious, man, you mentioned for you purpose, community, being two big parts of what men need. Guys will know that though, right? Like if they listen to our content, they're like, I need purpose, right? I have men in their 20s reach out to me, Frank, I need to find a purpose, or, I need brotherhood, I need connection, I need accountability. Knowing this is one part of it, but yet men that are very equipped from the knowledge base still seem to struggle. What do you think, and what has been your experience in getting in the trenches with thousands of men over the years, is the biggest barrier, the single thing, if you could point to one thing that holds men back from truly finding freedom?
Okay, you and I, we both have a faith element to to our lives and to the work we do, right? And in the Christian world, there's a lot of talk, especially around this conversation with sexual issues. There's a lot of talk about the enemy, right? How because we know like there's an enemy who wars against our souls and everything else. And people are very quick to go demon hunting. It's so easy to blame demons, right, for your issues. But there's a proverb, and it says, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." And sometimes I've seen this in our community a lot. Sometimes people blame the enemy, thinking that the enemy's working against them and there's this agenda, and what they don't realize is actually God's opposing them because they're operating with pride. And that's a big pill to swallow. It's hard to imagine that God would actually work against us. But I think a lot of guys are, and I shouldn't say a lot of guys, because actually I'm patient zero here. I was too proud. I was too proud to reach out for help. I was too proud to admit how bad my situation was. I was too proud to ignore everybody else. And instead of saying, oh, at least it's not bad as so and so, or, I'm still moving along fine, I'm still functioning fine in my life, instead of just realizing, yeah, but I'm called to so much more than this, pride was the thing that held me back for so long in my own struggle with pornography. And I think that's the thing that I see guys, that stops guys from actually transferring that knowledge into action, is pride. Pride is the barrier in between. And it always sounds so logical and so manly, like I'm going to figure this out on my own and then I'm going to have this great story. But guys end up delaying their progress. And sometimes guys end up losing something because of it, a marriage, a career. You talked about a beautiful story about one of your success stories with a client's daughter. I heard an opposite story this year from one of our clients who got caught watching pornography by his daughter, and his daughter's not talking to him. His daughter's moved out and wants nothing to do with him because she doesn't think he's safe and she doesn't think that home is safe anymore. And I just wonder, like, if he would have got help a few years earlier, maybe that could have been prevented, right? So I think pride is the big one. But the second part of that proverb, God opposes the proud, he gives grace to the humble. And so I think when people are willing to operate in humility, there's incredible strength that comes from there, not just from within, although I do think humility is always the best way to operate, but God actually gives additional grace to people who are willing to humble themselves, who are willing to just simply say, hey, there's other people who might know something, or there's other people that might be able to just be there with me while I work through this. I think that's where I see the greatest results happen, is when someone comes to us with pride. They kind of feel like they already know what they're talking about. They need our help, but they don't want it. And when people make that shift and they operate in humility, I think that's the best thing somebody can do for their own recovery.
That's a really powerful, I think, kind of paradigm shift there for a lot of men. I believe I heard you say sometimes pride can lead us to a victim mentality, right? Pride will prevent us from taking full ownership. And it's interesting because you would almost think that it would be the opposite. Like pride would create this over sense of self belief that is almost too false to truly believe. How does pride lead us to victimhood?
So pride, the challenge is you have to take responsibility for things that you can control. And so when I say, oh, well, at least my situation is not as bad as Joe, what happens is I'm kind of using Joe's situation and I'm actually outsourcing that responsibility. I'm outsourcing what I can control. I'm basically saying my decisions, they're not as bad as so and so's, but actually they are bad, and there are consequences, or they are having an effect. But if I'm numb to that, I might be taking responsibility, as in it's like, well, it's just my world, it's just my life, but I'm not actually taking ownership of the things that are driving those decisions. And that's where real responsibility exists, and that's also where real healing happens. So it's not just that you're taking responsibility, but you have to take responsibility for the right things. Otherwise, you're going to stay stuck.
Yeah, so true. You mentioned the purpose, the community, right? Consistent themes, I think, in any successful organization that is helping men. Like we have to get them out of isolation. You mentioned DeepClean 2018 was kind of the origin point where you were, you referenced an amazing, incredible system. What's something you can share with us here, the secret sauce, right? Like what separates the things that you do specifically and kind of, elevates you in the space and gives you guys that formula in addition to the purpose seeking and the community that you built with your men.
Yeah, well, we've learned this the hard way, I would say, helping guys for a long time. We made a lot of mistakes along the way. I come from a university research background, so, and I know like you love the science. You've had some massive scientists on your podcast over the years. So I made the mistake of thinking the more information I gave people, um, just the better their results would be, the more research we were, all that kind of stuff. Now we're still very research heavy, but I've had to really work on that skill of taking that stuff and making it digestible and accessible no matter where people are at. So we actually just redid our system. We kind of redid the whole thing last year into 2024. And one of the things that we did that has really made a huge difference is we tried to do as many quick wins as possible for our clients. And you and I both know not everything can be a quick win. Like there are some things that just take time. But for people, especially that are struggling with porn, you're so wired to get things quickly that if you don't, if the latency is too long, you'll just tap out. And so we were finding that clients were coming in with all this excitement. Maybe excitement's not the right word, but all this momentum. They make a big decision. We're not cheap to work with either, and so they've made a financial commitment to us as well. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's so much to do, there's so much information to take in, and they kind of just got bogged down. They'd muddle their way through, and then we'd have to kind of drag them across the finish line. So we just rejigged everything. We have a thing called it's on my podcast if you want to go check it out. We call it Trigger Diggers, and it's just an exercise that basically allows you to distill from a tempting moment or a time you're triggered, some of your root issues. It identifies them very quickly. It's a 5-minute exercise, and I will walk you through. It's one of our most downloaded episodes of all time on The Man Within. We do that really early on, and all of a sudden we just realized guys start to feel like, hey, I can actually do this. And I think it was Dave Ramsey. He tells the story about early on in the business. They were starting to do events, and obviously his book was taking off. And he overheard a couple guys in the book department. They were loading a truck. It was like, oh man, another case of books. And he could kind of feel the negative energy a bit. And so he went over to them and he just said, hey, there's no books in there. These are not books. This is hope. You're loading hope into that truck, and that's what we're going to be selling at the event. And that really stuck with me because I think that's transferable to what we do as well. Guys need hope. And I just realized for us we have a couple different exercises. Trigger Diggers is the best one that gives people that hope. And that hope often is what you need to endure some of the things that take a little bit more time, like healing from trauma or shifting your identity and some of those other core things that we work on. So that's been a big shift for us. And I would say our results have been exponentially better because of it.
Yeah, that quick positive feedback loop is so important. Like you said, we've experienced the same thing. Once they make that commitment, it's the release of endorphins, neurotransmitters. It's like, I made this commitment. Now there's like this wave of feelings and emotions they're going to experience for 48, 72 hours. That's going to wear off. And then their brain's going to go, okay, where's the next thing? And then porn is always that next best option, right? It's like, it's that gimme type of thing. It's like quick feeling of relief or rush or endorphins or whatever the case may be. So how do you shift them? It brings me to think about like the time I spent in fitness coaching, right? Like, you obviously knew you weren't going to change somebody's physique. If they had a lot of weight to lose, 30, 40 pounds, it wasn't going to happen in 30 days. But if in the first week or two, you could have them look at the scale and see a significant difference, and you'd use different methods, detoxes and stuff like that, maybe really, drop their calories very low for a short window of time. Now there's that buy-in, there's that belief, there's that instant feedback. I can do this thing because I'm seeing the progress initially. So I love that you integrated that. We have a 7-day reset. That's kind of an entry point into one of our community that kind of like every day gives guys like quick win, something to do, feedback into the community. Now you're getting guys to share, hey, that's awesome, do this, do that, da, da, da. So I really love that kind of initial biofeedback. We've talked about it a couple times here already. Just the growth of this industry. You've 10 years free of porn. It's like, well, the internet porn has only really been around for maybe a decade or a decade and a half prior to that. So, obviously it's evolving with AI. Only God knows what's going to happen with robotics, right? So the porn industry is going to change. It's going to continue to evolve, which is obviously going to force the work that we do to change and continue to evolve. Knowing this is a new field and something you've planted your flag deeply in, right? You anticipate exiting anytime soon. What do you think is kind of in the forefront, and how should you and I, maybe as coaches and leaders here, be looking at the industry and positioning ourselves to succeed? Or what specifically are you doing to be on the forefront of the things that are coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So we've just made some big shifts here in the last 6 months with how we do things for exactly what you said, the emergence of technology, I think AI in particular. Um, I'm also, and I don't know how much you've run into this online, but I'm a little bit tired of dealing with algorithms because you and I put out really good quality content, but because of what we talked about, like the algorithm doesn't always play nicely with us. But I think beyond that, I think we're 2 or 3 years from not being able to tell what's AI generated and what's actually human generated in the social media landscape and just the media landscape at large. So I'm believing that people are going to pay a premium, or will at least pay for just real person interaction where they know they're talking to another person. And so I'm going all in on communities. We're not scaling back our presence online, but I would say growing organically and trying to really get into the algorithm is not a goal of ours anymore. What we want to just try to do is get people into communities, digital communities, where we got a big growing community on Mighty Networks, and we have a free level, we have a paid level, and so that's for me what's going to become the backbone of our business, because I'm a little bit tired of fighting with the algorithms. Part of it's frustration, but the other part of it is I can see where things are going, and I can tell that people are going to be looking for that real interaction online to know I'm actually talking to another person. And I just think an isolated platform like Mighty Networks that still kind of feels a bit like social media, but doesn't have all the distractions and all the targeting with it, I think is going to be supremely valuable. And we're already seeing that, that like we launched a free community 2 or 3 months ago. It's already got over 1,000 members in it, and I think it just shows people are already looking for this, and I think it's going to be all the more true down the road. And I think the other side of it, Frank, like, because AI is going to change how people experience their adult entertainment, quote unquote. um, I think the need for community and connection is going to be much more necessary in the days ahead, because people are going to be so bonded to their robot or their AI bot. I don't know if you saw this clip going viral on Diary of a CEO. Did you see that? Do you see the clip? It's Steve Bartlett, I think is his name, right? The host of that podcast, and he's talking to Elon on X. He released a AI bot called Annie, and she's like very seductive without any prompting or anything like that. She's just very like talks about how naughty she is, and And like, again, you're just seeing like that's Twitter. I mean, that's a mainstream platform. Kids can access that. So I'm just envisioning the level of bonding that's going to take place, how addicted people are going to be. And I think a real like community experience is what's going to be necessary for people to heal from that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that clip with Steven, but I know Gary V has spoken very strong about his belief that maybe not your children, but your grandchildren like will be marrying robots. Like they're like it's not far away to where like the marriage will be human into robot. And Tom Bilyeu talks a lot about his belief that we're going to integrate with all this, and it's like some of that I wrestle with, man, and I'm sure you do as a man of faith there as well. But there's big money, there's big platforms, and there's a lot of reasons why it could take place. So being prepared, but I think, like you said, the need for real connection. Are you guys looking at this? Was Drew Boa had him on recently? He was the last guest here on the Coach's Corner. He's leaning heavy into in-person retreats and events. Is that something you guys are exploring with DeepClean, or are you already doing it?
Yeah, already doing it. Yep. Definitely seeing the value for that as well. I'm seeing the value of that in my own life. Like I've been doing online masterminds and I've done business masterminds where you're in person. The in-person experiences are always much more impactful. And that's only going to become more real in the days ahead. So yeah, definitely seeing the value for that. I'm actually learning a lot from Drew. He and I've been talking separately, and I'm like, hey, how do you set this up, or how do you structure some of these things? He's been a great kind of mentor to learn from in that regard. So he's a bit further down the line, but yeah, we're seeing the value of that for sure.
Yeah, incredible. Last question, man. I really enjoyed this, guys. Like I said, we'll have Sathiya's episodes on the Super of Life linked down there in the show notes. We'll have all his Instagrams, his websites, his communities, the podcast, everything linked down there in the show notes. Last question here, Sathiya. Thousands of guys are going to hear this conversation. Hope and pray maybe one day it will be millions. What's the one thing that you would like to say to the guy that is out there and is, on the fence? He's struggling. Maybe he's not even faced the reality that it's a major issue. Just speak to the man out there that is hearing this, stuck with us through this conversation, and is seeking for some hope or some real change in his life. Speak directly to him today if you can.
I mean, you've been listening to somebody who was addicted to pornography for 15 years, had tried everything, did everything, had the right intents. And I've now helped, another 1,000+ guys also figure this out. Different stories, different stages of life. But myself and the 1,000+ guys, we all have one, and Frank as well, and all the guys he's helped, we all have one thing in common, which is that we kept going. And at some point, we reached that place. And again, I don't know the specifics of everybody listening. All I know is that if you don't stop, you win. Eventually you figure it out, and everything will come against you. Circumstances will work against you. The enemy will try to stop you. Something along the way will always try to get in front of you. As long as you keep going, you will eventually win.
Great place to end there, guys. Keep going. Don't stop. Sathiya, I'm sure you've had the question asked to you thousands of times. How long does it take? I don't know. It's going to take as long as it takes. Just keep going. Because if you continue to put in the work and you continue to have hope and belief within yourself, freedom is inevitable. And it's different for everybody. I think I see things through the lens of a growth trajectory, right? Like identity is a growth process that we're all on. So some guys come into your organization, your program at a different stage in that growth development. So it's going to take them a little bit longer. Some guys, it's putting one final piece in the puzzle. But as long as you believe in yourself and you believe in the process and just don't give up, freedom will be yours. So guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us here today. Check out Sathiya, all the amazing things that he's doing. Sathiya, grateful once again, man, for everything you're doing in the world with men, and looking forward to continuing to stay in touch and just fighting this fight collectively together, because rising tides raise all ships. So incredible, brother. Thank you so much, guys. Share this episode, rate, review, check us out down there in the links below. But until next time, your host, Coach Frank Rich, for Sathiya. Love you guys. See you in the next one.